2, 1, and we are live. Welcome to the Standout CEO Show, your gateway to building a standout business with your personal brand. And today, we are taking a look at the combination of productivity, being super productive, and having a growth mindset, and at the same time, being happy. Now, is this even possible? Like in today's world, in the hustle culture that sort of supersedes all the work ethic that seems to be surrounding us on a daily basis, can you do it all? Can you actually be productive and meet your goals and meet your dreams and have this mindset of like, okay, so I'm growing my business, I'm going to be successful, and along the way, are you going to be happy about it? I mean, there are many examples, flaming and burning examples of people out there who have achieved a certain degree of success. But if you ask them the question, are you happy? They would have to admit, actually, no, I'm kind of miserable. And if you've been alive over the last 2 years, there's a lot of reason for feeling stressed and overwhelmed and that things haven't, just thinking that things haven't been going the way that you had planned. So today, I've got a special guest who's going to help tackle these questions. Her name is Yuri Choi, and she is the author of a brand new book, which is called Creating Your Own Happiness. And she is a performance coach. She's someone that I met a few years ago on a touring circuit with this movable feast of a in-person conference. And we are going to reunite and dive deep into this conversation. So stay tuned. The answer could be coming very soon. Let's start the show. All right. Yuri Choi, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me, Brad. It's an honor to be here, and I have missed you. And I was just dancing to your intro music because I think it just really embodies who you are. You're such a ball of joy and light, and so good to see you again.
Yeah. Okay. So the big question I have is like, where do we even start with this? Like, I'm, first of all, admiring of the fact that you've just put out this new book. The topic is brilliant. And in the context, I want to put this in the context of who might be listening to us today, which is basically people who are professionals, they're working, most of them have their own business, they're entrepreneurs. And this isn't necessarily, although it could be, like, I know that my own personal happiness, my own personal sense of satisfaction comes from inside me, but it also comes from the relationships that I have around me and all of that. And yet we can find ourselves, and I know this, myself personally as an entrepreneur, we can find ourselves putting ourselves on our own kind of treadmill, our own kind of never-ending gerbil wheel of things to do. And seeming like, well, we're doing this work and I'm not sure we're making progress, or we're doing this work and I'm not sure that we're actually growing, or we're doing this work and I'm not even sure I'm getting where I want to be. And even in those moments where we have some bit of success, we don't stop to celebrate, and we don't stop to take a breath. We don't stop to go, okay, great, pat yourself on the back. This is amazing. We just keep going. We do more and more. And I've seen across the board, many colleagues really get into a kind of dim place around how satisfied they are with their life, with their work, with their relationships, with all of it together. So again, I'm going to go back to like where, when you take a look at this, where do you even start?
Yeah, that is a great question. One of the things I noticed, to answer your question of where do we even start when we're starting to look at creating these new possibilities where we can actually create a life where we get to be happy and successful. I would invite my clients and anyone who's watching this to get out a piece of paper or your journal and journal about what does happiness mean to you? What does success mean to you? And where did you pick up those definitions of success? Where did you pick up those definitions of happiness? Because we oftentimes, and it's interesting because as entrepreneurs, and I've been on both sides, and I've worked in the corporate, world, and I started my own business and been doing my own thing. Yet there's still so many ways that we are unconsciously conditioned into these definitions without ever even questioning, where did we pick up these definitions of success and happiness? And oftentimes, when we look at it, we realize that we're operating completely on someone else's definition of happiness and success. And we're trying to, meet these goals, these milestones based on that without ever questioning where that even came from. So, without even realizing, we actually have this frame that is setting us up to trying to meet another person's definition of what it means to have an awesome life. And once we get there, we're like, why aren't we happy? I swear, someone told me that this is going to make me happy. This is exactly what I'm supposed to do in life. And yet I'm here and I'm not feeling what I thought I'd be feeling. And that's exactly how I felt when I was in the corporate world. I was making pretty good money, pretty good schedule, pretty comfortable. And yet I was just so not fulfilled, so not happy with what I created. And I was so confused because I could have sworn I went to college. I could have sworn I went and got my SAT scores so I can go to college and, got this job and another job and another job and another job because somebody at one point told me this is the way to do life and to be happy. And to realize that that wasn't my definition of happiness and success, it just really hit me in the face to realize, oh, I got to do something about this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. And I think, to put it into the context of where a lot of people are being forced to live right now, which is online. Like a lot of our communication is being done virtually. A lot of our messaging is being done virtually. And, in the pre-pandemic period, in the pre-social distance period, a lot of our networking, a lot of our interacting with other people, a lot of the way that we would buy and sell things, a lot of the way we would travel, like all of this was being done in the real world in real time. And we've now moved into this smaller, physical space of our home office studios. and and our interaction is virtual. Like a lot of things are very virtual these days. And so there, as a result, we're spending more time online. And as a result, we're seeing even more of this tendency to watch what other people are saying and doing and compare ourselves with them and their message. And of course, in the virtual world, things are actually virtual. Like what someone is showing on their Instagram feed and what they're showing on their LinkedIn posts is not necessarily the real world. It's certainly not the whole world of what's going on for them. And so when we see someone basking in Bahamas, or when we see someone, driving their brand new car or whatever, like whatever is going on, and we go, oh, wow, they're doing that. What's wrong with me? And
Mm.
our own sort of satisfaction meter starts to decline in the realm of comparison. So what would you say for for people who are like, this is something that's a reality for everyone, and how do we balance the need to be online and communicate this way with putting some sort of virtual blinders on that goes, well, okay, I'm only going to look at this and not worry about what other people are doing.
Yeah, no, I think that is a great question. Thank you for asking me that. And so there's a lot of different layers to that question. First of all, how do we stay happy with the existence of comparison? One of the things I learned, I remember when I went through my yoga teacher training, although I've never actually taught yoga as a job or anything, but I just love yoga so much that I decided to become a yoga instructor. And when I went through that training, one of the things that they told me really stuck with me, and it's actually in the book as well. They said to avoid JEC, and that was judgment, expectation, and comparison. And I really try to tap into that, tune into that. Anytime I find myself going into the space of, ooh, like why nothing's changed, something shifted in my mind. What is making me unhappy right now? And it typically goes back to one of those three things. And one of the ways that, I was able to create that mindset for myself is, when we go to any kind of art shows or concerts, we listen to all different kinds of music. And you'll notice that, or you will see all different kinds of art. And I truly, truly don't believe that any art is better than another piece of art. It just really depends on your preference. It really just depends on what it is that you value. And we don't look at an artist and say, oh, that art is terrible. And if you are, that's a whole different conversation. But typically, what we're able to find is the uniqueness, the unique expression of who that artist is, what that art is showing. And if we can actually apply that mindset to how we view other humans and how we view ourselves, it gives us that freedom to be an artist of life, to be a creator of life. In a way, it's not a comparison, it's not a competition. We don't look at a color like white and say it's better than black. It just is. Different colors are different colors. We don't look at a color pink and we think it's better than purple. They're all amazing in different ways. All these colors are necessary. All these colors, have different uses for how we get to use them, and we get to appreciate them for what they are. And if we can really see each human that way, that gets to be something that eases our mind and that allows us to just shine as we are without having to think about, is that color better than mine? Is pink better than the white? And going into that overthinking process. So, one thing that I've trained myself to do is not, um, can we be in a space where we can truly, from like the deepest core of our heart, of our being, to celebrate each other's successes as if it's our own? Because if we can really tap into that deep, deep sense of gratitude and celebration of what other people are experiencing, that allows us to actually, be inspired rather than, be envious, jealous, or whatever is coming up. And also, I do think that every emotion is actually powerful, even the ones that we think are icky or, not the best types of emotions. Oftentimes, what I find is that these types of emotions, such as envy, such as jealousy, is actually pointing towards what our souls really do desire, but we haven't allowed ourselves to admit that we want those things for ourselves. So, if we can actually take a moment to realize we can observe our emotions and not become those emotions, we can actually learn from them and say, wow, I found myself, being envious of this person who's on this trip on the Bahamas. Instead of being in that emotion, you can detach yourself for a second, become an observer of that emotion and say, what are you trying to teach me? What are you trying to show me? Oh, okay, this envy is showing up for me right now because it's actually showing me that I want to go to the Bahamas. Okay, cool. Well, thank you, this person, for showing me what's possible, what I actually do desire. And now I can plan my own trip or, plan my own path to create that situation for myself.
Yeah, that's great. Show me what's possible. Thank you for showing me what's possible. That's a really good reframe. And I also really like the concept of artist for life. I mean, this is something that I really try and embody with all of the endeavors that I've participated in, is that how can I do this work that I've decided to do, that I've chosen to do, and at the same time be expressing myself creatively, even artistically, while I do it. I mean, it's certainly one of the reasons why I do video as my main core piece. And it's what I communicate all the time through my own messaging, and also every time I'm working with a client. It's like, don't treat this like some kind of technological hurdle thing. This is an opportunity to express yourself as an artist. And this could be as a performing artist, as a speaker, as someone who has, thought leadership, as someone who can build a movement and create positive change. All of these kinds of things are artistic endeavors. And for me, I gain just huge amounts of satisfaction from doing that. And the other thing I'm going to underline in terms of what you just said was in your yoga instructing world, I remember one of my favorite teachers always talked about leading from the heart. This is
Mm,
something she would repeat pretty much every class. And part of it was talking about the physical movement of having your chest be the place that you lead from in your movement and also lead from in your breathing. But it was this more spiritual thing of the intention behind why you're here and why you're doing
mhm.
that. And this is something that, I mean, I worked with this person for several years, and it's something that I've taken ever since then. It was like, oh, if I'm feeling a little bit out of joint or there's something not going quite my way, if I do pause and say, oh, how would I lead from the heart as my next move? What would that look like? That has been a really great reminder for me.
Ah, that is so yummy. I love that. And yeah, I love that so much because one of the things that I do believe is so powerful in creating this mindset, creating a reality that we get to stay happy is creating these intentions. One of the things that I ask my clients in the beginning of a lot of my calls is, hey, what intention are you setting for this week? What are you grateful for today? And what we focus on grows, right? So when we get to set those intentions from our heart, we can continuously check in. Okay, so for example, if my intention for the day is service, then I get to say, if I start to feel anything but good, I can check in with my intention and say, how can I tune into the intention of service right now? Or how can I tune into the intention of love right now? And then everything shifts. And, that focal point allows me to realign. We talk about alignment a lot in this work. And oftentimes we're like, what are we really aligning to? It's our intentions, it's our visions, it's what we want to create in this world as a creator. And that's one of the things that I talk about often in my book, Creating Your Own Happiness, is how to continuously be a creator. So whether we call it the artist of our life or creators of our life, I mean, there is a certain energy of tapping into the frequency of being a creator. So, for example, when we're creating, we get to acknowledge that we're forever creative beings and that we can create any new possibility, even if that means, having a successful business and creating my own definition of happiness and living a reality, creating a reality that allows me to have both. So, by tapping into that, now our brain is thinking, okay, well, how can I create that? And just like how most of my clients created their businesses, how they created their books, through how they created whatever creations that they created into the world, they can equally utilize those mental muscles to be able to create these new realities, these new possibilities forever. So yeah, it gets to be a fun process.
Let's go a little bit deeper in terms of the whole mental muscle thing and creating new realities, because I know that like neuroplasticity is a thing. We can, if we are imagining one kind of future or even one kind of present, and or certainly if we're in the moment being a certain kind of way, then our brain can't tell the difference between the, what's going on in our heads. This is why, for instance, storytelling works so well. When we're listening to a story and there's something amazing going on in the story, whether it's a huge adventure or a huge, triumph or something really awful going on, the emotional content of the characters in that story, our brains just take that all in. Like we feel the same emotion. And the reality of the story, even if it's total fiction, we completely feel and experience. We have the same experienced. And our brains can't really tell the difference between what's fiction and what is actually real. And this works, my understanding, this works in terms of future pacing and creating happiness and creating some kind of mindset where we're like, oh, I'm actually feeling pretty good today. and
Yeah,
I'm actually having a
absolutely.
pretty good life here. And if you keep telling your brain that, the idea being your brain starts to accept it as like, yeah, you're right. The reality is coming to you. So can you go a little bit further in that direction?
Yes, absolutely. So, two things come to mind. One of them is taking the facts of what happened of that story, whatever it is that you're faced with, and thinking about in two different lenses. Oftentimes, if you have trained your mind to go to the worst case scenario, because for some reason, a lot of people think initially that is the way to avoid the worst case scenario, where that's probably the opposite, because now we're giving more energy and focus onto that particular reality. What we can also do is take those facts and create a story where it gets to be empowering. What would be the most empowering story that you can create with the same facts, and just play with it? You don't have to stick to that story if you don't like it. You don't have to resonate with that story. We just get to play trying on that story, and oftentimes once we try it on, we realize that is probably a better story that's going to lead us into a better emotional and energetic state. So that's something that we can play with. And along the similar line, one of the things that I love having my clients do is creating letter to self from their future self, as if they're writing a letter to their old self, which is right now. So they actually get to create a letter saying, "Hey, I know you don't know me yet. I know you haven't met me yet because I'm your future self, but this is what's happened." And I have a series of questions and exercises that allows them to really tap into that future self. And by accessing that, they're able to create certain levels or a certain amount of advice that the future self would give, so that they can actually create that future self and tune into the frequency of that future self. So they're actually reverse engineering their reality from their future self, and within that process they're able to tap into that energy, tap into that emotional state. By the way, when I say emotions, it is the same thing as the energetic state, because oftentimes that is, what's being created when we feel anything. So we're able to feel that now as if it's happening. And some people might think that is, faking it till you make it or whatever. And if you know anything about manifestation, it is all about feeling it now so that those things happen faster for you. So, for example, if I wanted to, I don't know, invite a really adventurous, fun opportunity, if I can tap into the emotion of what that would feel like now, I would imagine that's going to actually allow me to attract more of those opportunities, rather than being all sad and, pissed off or whatever, just because there's some magnetism into someone who feels good, and it's going to match the frequency of the people who typically love doing adventurous things. So now I'm actually able to create that reality faster by tapping into the feeling of it. And the cool side effect of that is that I get to create that reality while having fun, while being happy, and while, manifesting it all together. So,
Yeah, right. Just kind of feel your way, like literally feel your way into the reality that you want to be creating for yourself. All right, well, let's tell me a little bit about your book and how that whole project came to be, because I have personally thought about writing a book from time to time. I'm still thinking about it, but the book isn't done yet. So I'm super impressed that this is something that you've taken on. So just tell me a little bit more about that project and how it came to be.
yes, it is a story for sure. I actually was in Bali at a business retreat, and I remember being challenged to declare something that I was scared to declare. And one of the things that I was very scared to declare was becoming an author. For whatever reason, it didn't feel like it's something that I could actually accomplish in this particular lifetime. I said, okay, if I'm going to become an author, maybe in my next life or the life after, but not this lifetime. It just felt so distant from my particular reality. And once I actually declared it, and I was witness in that declaration by other entrepreneurs and other people who was asking questions like, okay, how do you want to do this? When do you want to do this by? Rather than questioning if I can do it, if that's, even something that, I'm able to do in this lifetime, which a lot of times, if you're surrounding yourself with people who've already walked that path, it's easier for them to say, okay, yeah, this is totally possible for me, because I felt that before in my life when I created this, and look what I've done. So Yeah, so I declared that in Bali a couple years ago, and I think it was 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago. And I honestly wrote the whole book in the first 90 days, and I was stoked. I was like, okay, this is done. This is done, right? And afterwards is when my real inner work actually started for me, because this whole, and I do want to differentiate. It wasn't so much an imposter syndrome, rather than it was my dedication and my commitment to my integrity. I wanted to make sure I was this person that I said in this book, because this book was so personal, because this book really highlighted some of my deeper philosophies of life. It's interesting too, because a lot of times we think we are being authentic, and then we really look at ourselves and like, okay, am I really truly being authentic? And I sat with that and I worked through those things that came up for me for 2.5 years before I published this book, and felt really good about it, and felt good about who I say I am, because I wanted to stay in integrity. So it took me a little bit. And one of the things that my book coach told me when I first started writing this book was to write a C+ manuscript. And I'm sure, as you and I both work with a lot of high achievers, I'm sure our like, you know, high achieving personas like, "Rrr," so triggered right now. It's like, you want me to write a C+ book, C+ manuscript? And that really helped me though, because it actually allowed me to shed this layer of perfectionism that often comes with this process, and just said, you know what? Again, tuning into the intention. Why am I writing this book? This isn't for me. This isn't for my ego. This isn't for my A+ by some invisible grading system. This is actually for the people who get to read it and change their lives and get something from it, and decide that they wanted to do something differently in their lives, and it activates them into a new reality. And however this book is supposed to go out there and do its thing, that's really my intention. So at one point I just had to say, you know what, I am the person that I say I am in this book. At this point, that is becoming an imposter syndrome, and I get to recommit to my intention of allowing this book to have its own spirit, have its own soul, and go out there and do its thing, and impact people in the way that it needs to. And it has been quite interesting, actually. I feel like the parent following this book like a child, because I swear it has its own little soul, and it just goes out there, finds its own ways to be featured. It finds the people that it needs to, and I just kind of follow it around and say, okay, here I am. I'm the parent of this book, but this book is really here for you. So,
Yeah, well, I really like that aspect of, go ahead and write the C+ draft. I think that's really good advice for all kinds of
that was like, oh,
content creators.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to do. Like it's hard to be working on something and not be wanting to continually tweak it and improve it and make it better. And it's like, I know I can do better work. And a lot of people really get stuck in a rut of that. They do, I call this woodshedding. It's, this is a music reference of artists who want to get really good on their instrument. They'll go out back and they'll lock themselves in the woodshed and they'll practice. And they'll practice for days and weeks and months until they get so good that now finally, now that they're quote unquote good enough, now they can come out into the world and perform. And of course, the trouble is when they do that, they arrive and they go, here I am, I can do this thing. And like they've been like totally removed from the world all this time and no one knows who they are or cares anything about them. So
Yeah.
I
And
think part of the lesson is to get your stuff out there in front of people, so they can
yeah, and
receive it.
the willingness and the courage to be imperfect,
Yeah.
and just to flow. I truly believe that there's this creative flow that goes through society, goes through our own being, goes through certain communities, and sometimes it's just like allowing yourself to go, literally go with the flow, and put yourself in the flow of creation, whatever that wherever that takes you. I remember, this is actually during the pandemic, and this is a pretty good story when it comes to creativity and flowing with the creativity. I remember I thought, most people are probably going to go back to their fear numbing habits like drinking and whatever. Like, it was a weird time for a lot of people. So I wanted to commit myself to feeling grounded and to feeling intentional so that I can be that light for people. And I remember I just went really disciplined ways with my meditation. I was meditating like 2 to 3 hours a day, and I didn't drink during the time, during the pandemic phase where we were all locked in. And I just really wanted to stay clear for myself and for my clients and for the community. And I remember I had tapped into that creative flow so well that I was dancing. I was literally rapping or like creating poetry, like things I've never really done before. And I'm like, where is this coming from? And it's because I just really shed all these layers of what I'm supposed to be. I got super clear on my intention, super clear of my, just clearing out all the things that's not working for me. And I just became this being that was flowing with the creative force of the universe. And I remember just feeling like I wanted to create all the time, creating all sorts of different things. And it was so fun. And I still do that in different ways, but I remember that time distinctively because I think it was a time where most of the world was in a different space. And I was like, why can't I just stop creating? Or, I just couldn't stop creating during that time. So, um, whatever disciplined habits that allows you to access that, I think it's really important to identify them and continue to nurture them. So for a lot of my clients, it could be as simple as working out. It could be as simple as dancing every day, moving your body in certain ways. It could be as simple as actually being in the practice of creating whatever that is for you. It doesn't even matter. At the end of the day, only humans care about the quality and the what it is that you're creating, what is the value of what you're creating. But at the end of the day, when you look at it from the universe's point of view, it doesn't matter if you're creating a piece of art on your napkin or you're dancing in your own living room or creating a business, that you're in the velocity of creating anything. So anything that allows you to get there, it'll activate that creator within you.
That's great. Well, that's a really great note to close on. I just noticing we got a fan here. Mike Green is saying, "We love you, Yuri."
I love you, Mike. I haven't been able to look at who's watching, but it's great to see you.
Oh, that's so cool. All right. Well, anyway, as we close, tell us, first of all, how can people get in touch with you? How can they get a hold of your book? What would be a good way to hook up with you?
Yeah, so this is the book here. I don't know if you
All
can
right.
see. It's called
Yeah.
Creating Your Own Happiness. This is available on Amazon. So you could go to Amazon, or you can literally go to creatingyourownhappiness.com, and that'll actually link you back to Amazon. So you can order it there. And if you're watching this and you want to reach out to me, you can email me at thehappinessaddict@gmail.com, or you can reach out to me on Instagram at Yuri1C, or directly on Facebook or LinkedIn. If you're watching this, we're probably already connected. So feel free to reach out and say hi. And yeah, those are some ways you can reach me.
All right. Well, I'll make sure the link to your book is in the show notes so that people can access it. And this has been great. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk today.
Thank you so much, Brad. It's so good to see you. And I know you're in the East Coast. And yeah, it's so good to connect this way. And this is one thing that I really appreciate about technology in this virtual world is we can be so far and we can still connect. So
I know. It's
appreciate
so
that.
great. All right. So, anyone who is still listening here at the end, I just want to remind you that if you would like to go and binge, either watch or listen all of the archives of the Standout CEO Show, just go to the standoutceoshow.com, and all of the archives are there. And of course, the best way to join us is to join us live Tuesdays and Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And until the next time, so long.